Good morning, everybody. I'm David Kennedy, former director of the Bill Lane Center for the American West. I'd like to welcome you all to our 11th annual State of the West Symposium. This year we're going to focus on a sub-region of the greater American West, namely the greater Pacific Northwest, the Columbia River Basin. Let me just remind you of some important things about the Columbia River. It drains 7 American states and 1 Canadian province. The drainage area is larger than the territory of France, 1,200 miles long, 10 miles wide at the mouth. It's the 4th largest American river by volume flow. It's 10 times the average flow of the Sacramento River, which Californians think is a big deal. It's by far the largest river outflow into the Pacific Ocean of any river in either North or South America. It generates 44% of all the hydropower in the United States, including about 11% of California's electricity, thanks to something called the Pacific Northwest, Pacific Southwest Intertie. And it has literally been the water of life for peoples from time immemorial, including countless Indian tribes up and down the river, the Multnomah, Klickitat, Yakima, Nez Perce, Salish, Umatilla, Okanagan, Shuswap, and others. And today, some 16 million people in the Columbia Basin depend in whole or in part on that life-giving river for their life and livelihoods, not to mention the additional millions in California that get a lot of their electrons from there. The river also flows across an international boundary, 49th parallel between the United States and Canada, and that complicates matters in a way that we will be discussing as the day goes on. So I want to thank our partners in this enterprise today, the Stanford Institute for Economic Policy Research, and especially the Hoover Institution, which has been a wonderful partner in this enterprise from the day we started planning it almost a year ago. And I'm very pleased to say we have the director of the Hoover Institution with us today, Condoleezza Rice, who is literally the person here who needs no introduction, so I'll keep this brief. Former National Security Advisor, former Secretary of State, former provost of Stanford University, longtime colleague in the political science department here at Stanford, and now the director of the Hoover Institution. So welcome, Condi, and I'll pass the baton to you.
Well, thank you very much, David, and I just am delighted to be here and to welcome you along with others to this great conference. This symposium is really fascinating to me, and it's fascinating for a couple of reasons. First of all, it dovetails nicely with what we're doing at the Hoover Institution. It's international policy, it's the environment and energy, it's the renewal of indigenous communities, work that Terry Henderson and Nick Parker have been involved in for many, many years. But also, when I was Secretary of State, we used to have these wonderful sessions on North America between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. We call them the Homeowners Association meetings for North America. But they were very special opportunities to talk about our shared concerns, our shared problems, but also our shared opportunities and our shared possibilities for prosperity. I know that we have, is Governor Inslee here yet? Jay Inslee is going to be joining in a few minutes, and I especially want to welcome Minister Murray Rankin from British Columbia, an absolutely spectacular place, and thank you so much for being here. We love Canada. Can I just say that? I'm especially pleased to be partnering with the Bill Lane Center, which has really helped Stanford to make a mark on the study of the American West. And here, the study of the American West in a very different way, a region that David has described as the importance of the Columbia River, known by many as the River of Life, the Greater Pacific Northwest. But I will say that it's a kind of metaphor as well, the Columbia River, for our interconnectedness, for our for the fact that we rely on one another in very important ways, and that we would not be the countries, the societies, the economics, the economies that we are without each other. And so I think that what this really says is that we have a very, very special connection here in the North American West, and that we have an obligation to understand it better so that we can preserve it better and so that we can exploit it better on behalf of our peoples for their prosperity and for their well-being. An important part of that, I know you're going to deal with Indigenous stewardship. I'm very pleased that we are able at Hoover and through some other work to bring that particular aspect to this. It's an interesting aspect because, of course, the Indigenous peoples have been preserving and defending and stewarding this land for a very, very long time. And so talking about their story, and one of the things that we try to do is to communicate that story to new generations of Indigenous peoples as they continue the heritage of protection. This is also important because it brings into questions treaties and governance. One of the things that you learn when you're Secretary of State is that when the originals four were created, that is the Secretary of State, Thomas Jefferson, Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton, the Attorney General, J. Randolph, and at the time Secretary of War, that they kind of divided up the labor on what to do, I guess. I can kind of see them sitting around saying, well, Tom, you take that. And one of the things that old Tom took before the United States had much in the way of international relations was actually relations among certain states. So once in a while, I would actually find myself signing something between Minnesota and North Dakota, or between Canada and North Dakota. So, or worrying about water rights, where the Texans were suing the Mexicans about water rights. And I remember thinking at the time, I'm Secretary of State, am I not supposed to be doing the Middle East? Well, no, actually, I was supposed to also be doing North America. And so I have a special place in my heart for what you are going to do in this particular particular iteration of the issues, the problems, the concerns, but also the opportunities that you're going to explore in this very interesting symposium. So David, thank you very much for letting me join you at the beginning. I look forward to hearing about what you have done in this symposium, and I look forward to continued and in fact expanding relationship with the Bill Lane Center, with CPER, and with the Hoover Institution, where since we sit in the American West, we can do a great deal more. Thank you very much.